Brother Gene Soul, a good friend of mine that's helped me in a lot of ways, mission trips and several other things. And tonight I want to introduce Gene to you as he's going to come and share with us. So, Brother Gene, thank you. You're among friends. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Many of you know me because I always sang in the choir before that was strictly communion. Thank you, Pastor, for allowing us to be here. I'm on a journey, and I had an opportunity to cut my back.
Are you open minded?
No. Can you hear me now? In the back? Can you hear me?
A little bit loud.
A little bit louder?
Yeah.
Well,
You
I
might
might
need
put
it.
it on, but I'm not the first speaker, so I just want to introduce Ms. Amy.
Okay.
We have two pieces, but can you hear me now? Okay, I can talk this loud. And I like to talk loud anyway. So we have two pieces we're going to present tonight. This could be very complicated. I hope that it's not. I've been dealing in it for 3 or 4 years, well, 4 years. Amy's been in it for about 3 years. Amy's at like 3 years? Maybe 16? Okay, I go back to 14, I think, is where I wound up getting involved. So I got some history in the Convention of the States project. We've been, in my opinion, struggling in the Convention of the States project to get what we need to have done down in Columbia. And my wife and Miss Joanne Stone, who is back there in the back, they spent, what, Miss Joanne, maybe 2 years walking the State House. And all they were doing was giving out Convention of the States paper. I mean, we had boxes and boxes of paper, and we show up every week. And we go give this paper out to every office down. They walk to every office, talk to a person in each office. First, there went to trash can. What we found out, the secretaries read it, and they knew a little bit. The people that were supposed to do something with it didn't do anything. It's a sad note from my perspective. And we did that now, we've done that, for several years. So, Gene Soul said, this is not working. And before Amy came on board, I was the director for House District 93. That was my title with the Convention of the States. So everything that 93 had in it, I was responsible for reaching out to them. I got phone lists, I called people, I tried to get people interested in the Convention of the States project so we could get them interested in contacting their local representatives and Amy Aurora, all that. It was frustrating, very frustrating for me. It wasn't really working for me. So from that, the Lord put it on my heart that the Convention of the States project was his project. In a way, I'm going to put it like that. And I'm involved in that. And so he wanted me to do something. And I'll tell you the story after that. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy. She's going to walk you through Convention of States project. She can answer any of the questions you might have from a technical perspective. And I'm going to pick up the second piece, which is dealing with a team across the nation. Excuse me.
Thank you. Thank y'all for having us. Can y'all hear me? Okay, good. So, Convention of States Action, the reason that I got involved is, of course, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, but I'm also a grandmother. And I have 6 grandchildren. 3 are bonuses, and they're just as much mine as the others. But when I look at this country, and I love this country, I see it declining quickly into socialism, tyranny, and also massive debt, which is going to be passed to my grandchildren, and that breaks my heart. So when Gene called me, I signed a petition in 2016, but I think he may have called me in late 16, early 17, I'm not real sure, and asked if I wanted to get involved. I said absolutely without hesitation, because I had already done my homework, and I had went online and read everything. They have great resources on their website. A lot of endorsers that I happen to respect and admire. And I thought, well, this can't be that bad. And I'm going to tell you why. So, Convention of States, let me ask you just real quick, here is completely happy with the federal government? Nobody, yeah. That's my hands I sat on when I heard that question the first time. And I want everyone to be assured that there is separation of church and state with politicians. We don't endorse politicians. We don't campaign for politicians. That needs to stay out of the church, completely out of the church. However, that does not apply to individual church members being patriots and actually loving your country enough to take action to say, this is how I want to live. This is how I want my grandchildren to prosper. This is how I think it should be. You're allowed to do that as Christians. You're allowed to do that from church. You don't have to, bash political candidates or be for or run a campaign for to be a patriot. That's the difference. So I wanted to clear that up just in case somebody was having, issues with that thought. But definitely the government it's injected itself into every possible aspect of our lives, and it continues to grow. And just as an example, the U.S. Department of Education was created, and there was really no constitutional reason to do that when each state had their own Department of Education. There's a lot of overreach and growth that they just continue to grow into our lives. So I'm going to talk about the problems right now. If you'll change the slide. The federal government definitely, you know as well as I do, Washington, D.C. will never voluntarily relinquish their power. They're not going to do it. They go up there, they intend to do a really good job. I'm sure when they get elected, they think, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to vote my constituents. Some do, some don't. They get up there and they fall into a corrupt system that they're actually paralyzed unless they play the game. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Swamp episodes. If you haven't, and you have access to a computer, internet, and YouTube, Google the Swamp and watch the episodes. There is a gentleman on there that, I think he was from Virginia. He went up to do his bidding for his constituents, brand new. He goes up to Washington. He's elected, gets into his office. The first thing that they do is his party brings him an invoice. It's an invoice with a tiered amount. And they tell him, if you raise this much money, you can be on the A committee. If you raise this much money, you can be on the B committee. If you raise this much money, which is least important, you can be on a C committee, but you'll still be on a committee. But that least important, guess what was on the least important? The thing that we patriots care about greatly is our veterans. Congress thinks that our veterans are the least important. So there are things that are messed up, and of course if he didn't raise that money, he wouldn't get to be on one of those committees and effectively change the way that government's done. Everything that they're doing is just growing. The federal government overreach, that's a huge problem. That's one of the big main problems. It's slowly eroding our sovereignty. We're going into tyranny. Lack of federal government fiscal restraint, that's a big one. Here in South Carolina, we live under a budget amendment. South Carolinians thought that was important. I think it's important in my house. Don't tell my husband, because he thinks I don't think it's important in my house, but I do. I think it's important to be wise with our income, be wise with our money. I expect my government to be wise with their money. I expect my local county government to be wise with the money. But the federal government is showing complete and utter irresponsibility. Our national debt has surpassed $23 trillion. If you want to see how the debt continues to grow, it's kind of scary. It's like watching a Halloween movie. Because if you go on the internet and pull up usdebtclock.org, you'll see the debt rolling. And it tells you how much debt we're going into every second, and it spins constantly like this. Very scary. So for each individual taxpayer, that means if we want to pay off our national debt, what's owed right now? It's $187,388. I don't have that kind of money. I wish I did. I don't even have that in my state retirement. I don't. But if anybody here has that portion and they'll pay mine, I'll gladly let you. But the unfunded liabilities of the country, and that's projected debt, a lot of different things go into that, 127.5 trillion. That's a lot more money per individual just to get us caught up to what we are already extending ourselves for. And that's all thanks to the federal government. Special interest groups, lobbyists, and everybody else pushing for what they want up in Washington. Federal government working outside the intent of the Constitution. They tend to use part of the Constitution to grow their power. And Gene can explain a little bit of that more later, but they abuse it. Just to let you know, they've attempted to amend the Constitution 11,000 times. It's not an easy thing to do, even for them. It's only been amended 27 times. The annotated Constitution, and I do have a copy in my trunk, and my apologies for not bringing it, but I'll bring it in afterwards and show everyone. Originally, the Constitution was about 4 pages of 23 by 29, something like poster size, 4 pages, hammered out by all of our founding fathers. Eventually the Bill of Rights was added. That was great. We needed that. The what we call now the annotated Constitution is a book about this thick with very small writing, close to 3,000 pages. It's a little over 2,700 pages of federal, the judicial branch interpreting the Constitution, which if you look at the original Constitution and read it, we have some pocket ones. I don't know if you ever have gotten a pocket Constitution from anywhere. If you don't, get one, because it's a very easy read. I don't see where it needed to be interpreted, but they did. And that's what they did to grow. Next slide. But our framers of the Constitution were forward thinking, obviously. And they provided a path for the citizens of America to take action if the establishment just went completely insane. And I think we're there. I think we're completely insane. So there are 2 methods that they gave us to propose amendments to the Constitution. And I know everybody's familiar with Congress proposing amendments, but they gave us another way for we the people to reel them in. Next slide. So in Article 5 of the Constitution, I don't know if you've ever read this section, and I read it in school, probably read it a dozen times, had no idea what it meant, until I started reading the resources on COS, and I was like, wow, reading professors and lawyers and all their interpretations of what this means and how it can work for us was exciting to me. I thought, wow, they really did something to give us an opportunity to stop the runaway train of federal government. But the founders gave us this lawful solution on the application. Of course, I'll go ahead and start from the beginning because this is the way that we all know. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution. We know that. That's what we were taught. What they didn't really emphasize in school is that on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of several states, not federal Congress, not the federal reps, shall call a convention for proposing amendments. So that's exciting. I can read it, 10 times before I really researched it and still didn't know what it was because I didn't have anybody to explain it to me. Alexander Hamilton, he had big ideas, and actually he was the one who proposed this, but he said, by the 5th article of the plan, the Congress will be obliged on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the states, which, by the way, 2/3 of our states goes into half-seats, but it ends up being 38, to call a convention for proposing amendments which shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the states or by conventions in 3/4 thereof. So the words of this article that he wrote are preemptory. The Congress shall. Shall means it's a done deal. They can't take it to court. They can't stop it. This is the Constitution. Shall call a convention. Nothing in this particular is left to the discretion of that body. So that's exciting. We may safely rely on the disposition of the state legislatures to erect barriers against encroachments of our national authority, or their national authority too. Next slide. So that's hope. Hope in a little sentence. So this is what the first step looks like, and this is what we're used to. This is what we see of the amendment process. So amendments are proposed by 2/3 of Congress, ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures, or ratified by convention of states. So it's actually the ratified by conventions of 3/4 of the states has been used once. And that was the 21st Amendment, which repealed the 18th Amendment, which was on alcohol manufacturing and sales. So they did use that one time. So that's that bottom tier that says ratified by conventions of 3/4 of the states. The next slide shows what the provision is, or the process that Convention of States is trying to call to everyone's attention. We the people, not we the politicians, but we the people. The second method prescribed is for the Convention of States to be called for 2/3 of the legislatures of the states. And for that, the convention is to propose one or more amendments. The good thing about this is that if we call this convention, all the states can participate and they can propose amendments, and we'll get into this in detail in just a second. But it would follow the same path as Congress. The amendments could be proposed by the Convention of States by 2/3 of state legislators, and then it can either be ratified the same way that Congress ratifies. It can be ratified by 3/4 of state legislatures, or ratified by conventions of 3/4 of states. So the next slide shows how this can be done, and I know this is incredibly small, and I apologize, but this document is on the Convention of States website. You can really dig into it because it is a two-sided document. But the first thing that would happen is 34 state legislatures apply for a convention to propose amendments on a specific topic, a specified topic. So you can't just hold a convention without a purpose. And you have to define that purpose, and all of the states have to aggregate. That means that purpose has to be the same. If one state comes in with something crazy, then their application is not going to be rectified or put into that group with the other states. So it has to be the same. Then Congress, once that happens, 34 states send their resolution or their application to Congress, and they all aggregate, 34. Doesn't mean the other states won't get to participate, but we'll get into that in a second. Congress calls the Article 5 Convention by setting the time and date. That is truly just a ministerial duty. That's it. They can't stop it. If they fail to do that, then the state legislatures can set it. So it'll happen. The states select, instruct, and send delegates to the amendment proposing convention. Can't send current politicians. They can send, or they can appoint, according to each state. They have a constitution in each state, and they have in that constitution, if they're to send delegates to represent the state, how many they could send. South Carolina allows 5. It can be previous politicians, it can be some representative from Convention of States here, or it could be anyone except a current politician. They can't do that. The convention occurs. When this convention occurs, all 50 states will be able to participate, even if they didn't send in an application with specified topics that aggregated to the other states. Congress selects the method of state ratification. Again, a ministerial duty. They can say whether it goes back to the state legislatures or by conventions in the states. Proposed amendments only become they can only ratify the Constitution if 38 states vote that it should pass. And they may go in and propose, because we have 3 specified topics, they may go in and propose something for each one. If one is completely off kilter, only 13 states have to do nothing. Only 13 states need not show up, and it's really a useless convention. But I think if that many states is showing up to propose amendments to the Constitution, they're all going to send delegates. They'll all be there. The next slide, we're going to talk about those specified topic areas that Convention of States has put into the resolution. This resolution has been duplicated, and all of the states that have so far sent in and passed this resolution, sent up to Congress, has used the same wording, except for in the areas of punishment when their delegates don't do what they say, or don't do what they're told. Because if they go up there and they try to do something that their state has not authorized them to do, they can be punished by law. Some states have fit in jail time, some fines, some's just yanking them out. But they won't get to stay. So the specified topic areas is fiscal responsibility, maybe introducing some spending restraints or balanced budget. We don't know what it's going to look like yet. Mark Levin has written a book of proposed amendments. If you ever get a chance to look that up, I think I have a copy in my bag. I can show you what it looks like. Term limits is the second one for federal officials. And notice I said federal officials. I didn't say Congress. It includes Congress. But we've got these judges up there that we don't vote on. Somebody else did it for us, and they're stuck in there for life and falling asleep on the job or doing a job terribly. Term limits for maybe Congress, federal judiciary, unelected bureaucrats that are the true power holders over our lives. Those are the ones that have the true power. Federal government power and jurisdiction is just completely out of control. And in South Carolina, our resolution has been introduced to both the House and the Senate. And you can look it up if you want to on SC Judiciary. There is an app on your phone, or you can go online and look up SC Judiciary. There's House Bill 3125 and Senate Bill S 112. And they are exactly like the modeled resolution that Convention of States has provided to all the states. The next slide shows the grassroots movement. So what has occurred so far? South Carolina has been at this for years, trying to get it through the House. We've had some stoving up. There's a lot of misconceptions out about Convention of States because the fearmongers, the power-hungry people, the far, far left and the extremists on the right, everybody that wants the power, not us Christians and local people that go to work, go to in our farm and farm our farms and come home at the end of the day, we worship God, we send our kids to school, not them. I'm talking about the people that strive for the power. They've put out some campaigns against us saying that we're trying to hold a constitutional convention. When you hear that, please take it in context. They are trying to say that we're trying to throw out the Constitution and rewrite it. But the thing is it doesn't make sense because the Constitution allows us to do this. It's a beautiful document. We don't want to throw that out. We want to rein the federal government back in, and that's exactly what the politicians in Washington, the lobbyists in Washington, the power-hungry players up there are trying to defame Convention of States. That's what they're calling it. They're calling it a constitutional convention. So when you hear that, just do your research and read on it. You'll see different. 15 states have passed the resolution. So this is serious. South Carolina has been trying to do it for years. We had some holdups, trying to getting it through. There's a sub-judiciary committee in the House, a judiciary committee, and then you get it to the floor, and then there's all kinds of technicalities. But we're close. We're close, and we need for our House reps and our Senates to understand that South Carolinians, by a poll that was taken by a very reputable poll, and I can't say it, it's Trafalgar, is that it? Trafalgar? 65% of South Carolinians want our state to pass this resolution. It may not do anything for years because it could, we still have to get to 34 states, but 65% of us. And in that 65%, there's a mix. Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians even. So this past year, South Carolina Republican Party passed the resolution during their convention, their state convention, telling the reps that the Republican Party does want the resolution. And I worked with the Libertarian Party for almost a year, and that was difficult for me. They're a wonderful group, but I didn't understand anything about libertarians. I knew nothing about them. So I approached it very lightly, went under the radar, kept my mouth closed, only explained to Convention of States when asked, and they also agreed with it. Now they vote Democrat and Republican. So 2 parties this past year supported it in their convention in South Carolina. So that's putting pressure on them, along with some other activities that South Carolina is addressing. The next one this is what the map looks like. So in the green areas, that's the 15 states that's passed. This map does tend to go live and change colors on, I believe it is the, one of them, let's see, I can't see this because it's so small, but blue has active legislation and the yellow has either passed it in their state's House or Senate. But the blue goes in and out, or the color that has active legislation, because when the legislation term ends, it goes back white, and then when it begins, it goes back to the color that they're in. But the yellow and the green are pretty solid. The next slide is just what this is for, is to curb the abuses of Washington. The founders knew that the federal government may become drunk one day with power, and they abuse it every day. The most important check to this power is the Article 5 of the convention, because it allows we the people to convene and say, you're going to stop doing this. To me, no violence is better than another civil war. And there is a lot of impassioned people in America. They love their country. They have their ideas of how they want to live, and they don't want it infringed on. We can do it peacefully through this process and know that it would be effective. Article 5 gives the states the power to call it and propose amendments, call the convention, and it's lawful. It is lawful, and it cannot be challenged by the president, the Congress, or the Supreme Court. So the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Gene, because he's going to talk about what the current grassroots team in South Carolina looks like, and where we are today, and his new idea of building precinct teams in each area so that we can get more people on the ground. The first thing that we would like for everybody to do is, of course, sign the petition, write a letter to your legislator. They say that's more effective than calling and anything else. But we also need to have our eyes and our ears on the ground so that we can encourage and develop and grow the grassroots movement. But Gene, I'm going to turn it over to you.
It's always a disadvantage to go after her. She's so good. So always got to start from behind. Thank you. I'm going to pick it up from there and run a little bit in a different direction. I told you I've been in the Convention of States for a number of years, working on it, going down the path that she had described. And this is where I'm starting here is the petition signers. This is what we have in South Carolina right now for a Convention of States project. Around 32,000. I'm looking at it here. You can look back there. 3,000 volunteers, about 850 active folks within the state working, and a core group of contributors. Now, and it's one thing I can tell you from the Convention of the States, they don't put a lot of pressure on a member of the Convention of the States to be a contributor, to pay your way through this. I've always been impressed by that. But they do take, funds because they have to operate. It's Amy didn't say this, but the Convention of the States project is in every state in the United States. It's a big organization, a lot of boots on the ground. And a lot of states are moving. Michigan just got through. It surprised me. They got their Convention of States project passed. Michigan used to be a very liberal state. Next slide, please. Call to action. This is about me. So I have to give you, and Kemet and I sat down and talked, and I get a little bit emotional about this. God had given me an opportunity through my career. I am 69 years old, or 67 years old. So I've worked all my life. In fact, I don't do anything else but work. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but I like to work. And the Lord has blessed me with work in all kinds of areas. I don't want to spend a lot of time about those areas, but those areas touch about everything that I'm going to talk to you about in the Convention of States. God has allowed me to go and do something personally, professionally. And because of that, this idea rolled out to me. There are some scriptures up there. I think you probably know these scriptures. They were real important to me because in each scripture, there was something I had to go do. Isaiah 6:14, I heard a voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" This last part's the hard part. Then said I, "Here am I, send me." It's hard to do on some things that you know God wants you to do. I don't know where you stand. I know where I stand. And sometimes you don't want to do what God wants you to do. So you have some choices. God allows us to make choices. 2 Chronicles 7:14, "My people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from the wicked ways. Then," that's kind of one of those catch-ups. God will do something, but there has to be something done to get that done. "Turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land." Doesn't that seem to fit where we are today in America? Struggling, struggling thing. It spoke to me. Esther, I always liked Esther. My wife loves Esther. That's her favorite person in the Bible. 4:14, and this is, I'm moving this one off of me to you. "And who knoweth whether thou art come to this kingdom for such a time as this?" Because that's what this is about. We are trying to reach out to you to see what God is telling you to do. We can't tell you nothing. Building a grassroots precinct team is the portion that I want to share with you this evening. Now, Amy had told you about the Convention of the States. Can you guys hear me okay, all the way back there? So Amy told you about the Convention of the States. And I told you I've been in it several years. The Convention of States is across all the United States. They have a really great network. How many have actually been to Convention of States project website? Two. Well, we have, that's for sure. And the master have. Anything you saw on there that sparked your interest? No. It's a great resource. If you want to know something about the Constitution, if you want to know something about what's happening, you can find it on there. If you want some training, you can get it on there. But that website goes all over the United States, and if you're a part of the Convention of States project, you get to use it. So, if we could get a team together, what is your precinct number? I forgot to ask you.
Oh, mercy. It's call. Anybody know the precinct number? No. Call.
Yeah, actually they call it call too.
Right.
You told me that before, I'm
I
sorry.
don't know the number, I'm sorry.
I should know it, but I don't, and I've seen it somewhere on the list.
I could probably Google it.
You probably did.
There's a resource at the end. There's a resource at the end. Show you how.
Yeah, these items that are listed here, these are actually places in our localities, hopefully. Anybody serving a local church? We've got some here, I'm sure. How about local schools? Miss Joanne does back there, and she's doing it voluntarily. Medical facilities, any nurses, I know the pastor's wife, if she were here. She's back there, yeah. Aren't you a nurse, or you working in there? Law enforcement, local law enforcement. You can read this as well as I can. These are just areas where people reside in a precinct. Now, there are a lot of precincts in the United States. Anybody have a guess on how many? And just, I thought it was on my, it's on my list here. I have to, don't look for ages.
Yeah, it's on the first slide.
Yeah, 2,284 precincts in South Carolina. That's a big number. 2,284 precincts. What if I told you, if you joined CAWCA precinct, Convention of the States Project, you could be in touch with your counterpart, whatever you do, be it the church, or be it the hospital, or be it the law enforcement, or be it the post office, whatever it is you do, you could get in contact with every one of these 2,284 people in the same position. What I really think is interesting about this, take the school, and Miss Amy said this. How many, I'm just asking, how many would like to see the United States to get out of the schools? The federal level. The federal level. Get rid of it. You know, the federal level, this ain't burning. The federal level in the education, 1 to 12, and that alone has duplicated everything the states have in all the powers. And now they have, over the years, have focused the money that comes and they buy what they want done in the states. We're held hostage. Even down to the food that the children eat. Even down to the bathrooms that they may go to. How crazy is that? Being directed from the United States. Not from South Carolina. Not even, you know what? We could put together a team in every precinct in the United States and we can get rid of it. You know why? Because we can touch everybody in every state and we can coordinate. That's the power I see in this. Now, we haven't enacted this yet. But if you're in a, let's take the hospital. We have a lot of issues with medical. I mean, expenses, drugs, people, passing by. What could we do if we tied everybody together and we had the same problem? And we all got to talking about it and say, hey, we want to take this to our representative in every state. Can you imagine the power that exists in there? So, that's what this is about. 2,284 self-directed teams. Now, what? Anybody ever work in a team environment? Okay. How about a self-directed team environment? Okay. You got any tips on what a team is versus going out and working for a boss?
Working for a boss.
Yeah.
You want delegation.
Okay.
Than have a boss. Everybody's given assignments.
Okay. And as a team member, if one team member has a problem, who do they go to? Anybody else work in a team?
Well, they go to another team member.
You go to another team member. They go to the team. And you work together. That's exactly right. Teams work together. I had the opportunity, one of the things that the Lord allowed me to do was, I'll tell you a little story. I don't know how much time I got, but I'll burn it up here real quick. I was serving as the plant manager of the nuclear station. I had been at the nuclear station for several years. The VP came in one morning, we had all the general managers around the table, and he said, downtown, this is SCNG, downtown wants some senior manager to take on total quality management. What's that? That didn't even clear total quality management. I don't know how I told my wife. I said, they want somebody to take on this TQM stuff. She said, what's that? I don't know. So I did like somebody else said. I got out, didn't have the internet then. I got out the books and I started studying. I said, man, this is a new way of doing business. I think I'll put my hat in the ring. You know, I threw my hat in that ring. 17 others threw their hat in the ring. They chose me. And as a result of that, they wanted to build a power plant at Coke. You know where Coke, South Carolina is? Anybody been to Coke, South Carolina? How about to the plant? Been to the plant at Coke? All right. Do you work there? Okay. Well, I was chosen to be the plant manager for Coke. And the reason I was chosen for that is they wanted to start up Coke for about $40 million less than they had in the budget. And they came to me because I was doing TQM, and they said, hey, can you help us cut the budget? And I said, what budget? They said, oh, for the new plant that we're going to build. And they had already cut the budget. And so they wanted me to show them how to do that. So I came up with the idea of, guess what? Self-directed work teams. That's what's on me. The Lord opened that door for me. I had no idea what I was going to do with that. We started playing without a supervisor. We leave it. First coal-fired plant that we know of. Start up without a supervisor. We had 2 palm readers, that's what they call themselves, as advisors. We had the plant manager, and we had our coordinator. And the teams did everything. How do you think the team did? Any idea?
Probably pretty good, because upper management is the one that just sits back and just let the team usually one got to do all the work anyway.
That's right,
And
exactly.
then you do, and management just to sit down here and just guide them through which way they have to go.
The president of SCANA at that time, that was the new company. The president, I'm telling you the story to get to this point. The president of SCANA came out and said that we're going to have a big layoff because we got to cut costs. And he went to every plant. And I was at Coke, I was the plant manager at Coke. We had determined to start out, originally the budget was 75 people. We had 53. And we were running the plant. Well, we didn't have all 53 yet. They said they came back to Coke and said, well, you don't have to cut anybody. The team came to me, I was in the office. They walked in the door and said, you know those 3 people that you're talking about that we need to hire yet? We don't need those. Can you imagine that? The team made that decision, and they did that. And we ran it without those 3. The team works together. So, self-directed team gets to make their own decisions a lot. And in here, and Amy hit this earlier, that's a good point. We can put self-directed teams together, be it in the church, or be it in the schools, or whatever. And they can make their own decisions, and it's not a governmental issue. It's a team issue. So, 2,284 self-directed teams. What the numbers are that I have looked at is, we got a little picture. Did we roll it up? I probably want a couple of more. There we go. This is where I want to spend some time. Can everybody see that? Okay. Tell me what you see up there. Pardon?
Fire station?
A fire station? Okay.
Sure.
A church?
Town hall.
A town hall?
What was that? Fueling station?
That over there is the fire station. That one back there is a school. There's a school up there, there's a town hall, there's a church, and that one back there is, I'm trying to remember what that one is. That's not the fire station, that's the school. No, the school is in the front there. I can't remember that.
Hospital?
Huh?
It's a hospital.
Hospital?
The hospital's in the middle.
Yeah,
The center one?
yeah.
Bottom center.
I moved him around on me, that's what.
Sparrow.
The Sparrow right there.
Sparrow
Supposed to
Hospital.
be the music, hospital area. That one back there,
Answer.
it's another business. That's what it is, it's a business. What am I trying to say? In each one of those areas, we want to put 2 people for this project. So if you work in a hospital area, and it doesn't have to be the same hospital, we would like to get 2 people working in the hospital environment on the team. On the team in every precinct, in all 2,000, whatever the number I said, I put my page on. 2,284 in the state of South Carolina. Let me tell you how many there are across the United States. This is a big number. 174,252 precincts. And we would put a team in every precinct. And if you take 2 people in every one of those environments, that's 10 for every precinct. If you do the math, you have no idea.